and realms, and he knows that from the beginning. And in his way, growing up, he learned a little different than I did, but that's okay. I could get into all my details later when I start teaching classes. But Tommy, you know, when we talk about the different levels, you're very intent on knowing how to say what you have experienced or know or mean. And some people feel like it's just, you know, too strong, or they don't get it because they didn't have your training. But could you tell people a little bit about why is it that you believe spirituality is different from being a religious person? Because you're like me. We were born one way, but we studied all these world religions, right?
Well,
and you had Ekankar, you live with a Buddhist, but it is different. So let's start at the bottom level. What is spirituality, you know, from religion?
All right,
and then we'll go up the levels.
Let's start
the levels.
All right, let's
you know
start
what I mean?
There. Because now, yes, in the spiritual world and the religious world, they have a belief system, or they create a semi kind of belief system. Now, they are different in their own beliefs as what they perceive it to be. Now, New Age people, which I call the spiritual age movement, consider themselves in this oneness, in connection with that oneness, and they believe they are free. So now that contradicts. Now they will say religions are dogma. Every New Age person, well, most of them will say it's dogma. It's a lost idea. It's ungrown. It's not growing. And then they'll put down laws, like you can't have laws if you're free. So now,
but does that mean they're pagans? Because you'll hear a lot of the evangelistic on television.
Well,
if you're not Christian, or you must be of pagan or old ancient beliefs and symbols.
I'm not going to look at it
like witches and warlocks and you know that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm not dealing it from a Christian level. I'm dealing it from reality.
Okay.
When somebody outside of a religion looks at it, here's a religion and here's spirituality. The spirituality people believe this. The religionist people believe that. Christianity believes in one God, and Jesus was God. Now, when you go into there's over 2,000 basic religions, and they're not much different in a lot of ways, and some of them are completely different. Witchcraft, voodoo, Santeria, they're religions, but they have totally different aspects of how they function and live and what they do with what they believe in, as far as killing and all those aspects of the words that they use, sacrifice. All those words fit into certain religions. So now, the New Age people, which consider themselves spiritual, all believe they're spiritual, meaning they can send out unconditional love, and they can't go much further than that. Because when you don't learn the definition of realms, which we're going to get into, and planes and existence, dimensional energies and things like that, you don't know where you are and who you really are at that point yet. And that's the whole purpose of learning all that in the present. But as far as the religions go, there's the basic religion, which is Christianity, is one of the biggest populations on the planet. So they believe they're right. And now you take the New Age people who believe they're right, which is the smallest population on the planet. And I just challenged somebody. I said, how many New Age people do you think exist on this planet? And it's not many. When you take 7.4 billion people, you break down 2.4 billion are into Christianity, 2.0 are into Muslims, and then you got all the other ones that break down in between that. There's not many to those
what
other parts.
What about the Buddhists,
and then when you go,
like Namgal?
Well, no, the Buddhists aren't high. It's, believe it or not,
they're not
it's
high.
Not one of the no, it's not the
Even
highest amount of people on the planet.
It's closest to the oldest on the planet, which was Hindi, wasn't it? The Hindu religion.
Hindu is still not the highest religion on the planet either. You have to realize they were worshiping multiple gods, and the multiple gods changed to singular God much later. Buddha didn't believe in God, so there's a big separation and change from God to no God to one God, and most people still believe in aliens as God. So it's such a wide aspect of how we perceive religion and spirituality.
And
now,
then we've got myths and legends on top of that, which we sort of went into yesterday with with John Tenayuga.
Right.
Mike was Friday, folks. John was Saturday. And Tommy was Sunday.
Right. Well,
Go
I
ahead.
try to keep Sunday as spiritual, but I try to stay away from all the documents and writings and stuff because they were all written by man. It's not like a deity came down and wrote out a script. It's not like God came down and wrote out.
Yeah, they never seem to show
tablets.
up, at least from to the masses, maybe. And we believe Moses wrote the clay tablets. And who was it? Eric von Daniken, wasn't it? That said he was a religious man and was studying religion, was told blah blah blah, and you got to study this, and he was translating from one I guess it was old Greek. He has to tell the story, but and forgive me if I forget which language he was translating, and but from whatever into his to another. But he noticed that God walked up and he was like taking the plates from God, but when he started reading it didn't sound like it. It sounded more like a spacecraft with noise and things, and everybody has an interpretation. But would that still be considered? Because he says don't make what Eric von Daniken believes. I think it is Eric, isn't it? Isn't he the one that does with Georgios Tsoukalos and the shows, Eric von Daniken? Wasn't it Chariot of the Gods? Was that him? Or do I have to look it up?
Yes,
Gosh.
yes, that was him.
It was.
Yes,
You know where
him.
I'm getting, right? Because that's almost become.
Right.
He says don't make it, but I swear I think that's becoming like a whole religion. Or would it be spiritual? See, there's Chariot of the Gods. Let me look it up.
I would classify it my own way, but I was just listening to Eddie Good. He said he has a book given to him when he was younger from an Israel person from Israel who had a book that was never released to the public on Notre Dame. And he was quoting stuff from Notre Dame and everything. But, again, religious people who follow certain people, religions follow a god, or they perceive to be a god. Now, if we go to Hindus, I work with the deities, Shiva, Durga, Kali, Manjushri, and deities like that. But when you go to Jesus as God, Jesus never said he was God, never claimed to be. And when they talk about angels, which is just as important, Lucifer was an angel. People don't want to look at that aspect, and he's allowed to stay where he is.
Hey, just so you know, Tommy, and those that are listening, Eric von Daniken did write, or he could say it Eric von Daniken, but Chariot of the Gods was written in 1968, okay? So it was him. But did you think, because that is, like you said, New Agey, but is that considered spirituality? Do people say they're spiritual that follow the mysteries and the chariots of the God? Because even George Nuri talks about it changed his life. Is that, what is, if it's not religion, and he doesn't want it to be a religion. But
right.
explain
well, he's not
that.
Spiritual, he's not religion, he's just a person talking about other people's experiences. He doesn't have his own experiences. When you become spiritual, you have to have experiences in what you're talking about. Then the most important thing that nobody does is prove those experiences are real to reality. Because I can say I believe in Superman, Batman, Green Hornet, and all those people.
But you got to say prove it, right?
Just to try to get somebody to believe it out there is crazy, and you shouldn't try to. But people get karma. When you put false messages out there, I mean, it's in the Bible a lot of ways too, but when you put false truth out there, you're responsible and accountable. So I always say the only thing that I'm accountable to is God. No other person on this planet I'm accountable to. Sure, if I go to court and all that stuff, it's a game. But I have to stand by my truth always until I die, because that is my truth. That is my God. So,
well, at least you show up and you're you have a conviction. And you can hear this. You really feel strongly about what you talk about. And Eric von Daniken, when I heard him speak, not in person, folks, I've never had the money to go traveling to do that. If I was traveling, it was usually for the government in and out of countries. But Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken, are you saying, he says that God, or what? Oh, he asked a question, and I remember him saying that when I saw him on a channel, I don't know, years ago, folks. But he said, was God an ancient astronaut? Do centuries-old religions of gods and heroes of space travelers? But he got us thinking anyway about the cosmos.
Well, he created a side road, because if you have a road that goes to God, there's no other road. You can take all the side roads and go all different directions, but you'll never get to the highest part of the road if you keep taking every side road. When he said that, people in the old days, deities and aliens were separate. They weren't the same. So when people say they work with an alien, it's not like working with a deity. I work with a deity. I have actual experience. I worked with masters that worked with me while I was working with the deities. I have a lot more proof and foundation in that I experienced in my life than most people do. And it sounds like ego. But I was with a Tibetan master who traveled the inner worlds with me directly. And we worked and did things and stuff. So when I came out of it, I made him prove who he was. And he proved it many times. I mean, ask a master to do something that they can't do normally. And he says, okay. He pulled the black rose out of the air right in front of my face. And I was a magician. So, no, it's hard to find a black rose no matter how or where you search. But, again, the proof is in your actions and what you can give to a person. I mean, you could tell a person they're going to be rich and famous, but is it going to help them find their spirituality?
Well, you know how many people I've been around. Tommy, you know, just quickly, how many times have you heard people, and I'm not making fun of people because I do it myself, we say, oh, I'm not, they'll say, well, what church do you go to? And I'm living in the Bible Belt, and I live down in the South, folks. You can't get any further south than I am. I'm on the Gulf, okay? Literally, right on the coast of Florida. I'm looking out my window, you know what I'm saying? And there's the ocean, okay? So I'm very south. So, Tommy, but down here, you know, they claim Baptist a lot. They claim Catholic, you know, the basics. They still religions. But believe it or not, I have a lot of people that I meet here going to church, but they say, oh, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. Or I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. Now, they believe it, but I'm not asking them to explain that like I'm asking you tonight. So, you know, what is spirituality? What is the difference between all these religions and spiritual? What do you think they mean? They're not religious.
Okay.
I'm not religious. Even if they're walking out of a church.
My truth on that. Now, in a religion, there's set rules and foundation. They want you to give 40% of your salary to the church. They want you to go to church every Sunday. They want you to go do this and that.
It used to be tithing, but my sister sends 40%. She's very religious or spiritual. So, over to a Methodist church. 40%. You just said it like it was normal. Where'd you get 40%?
I didn't become a preacher, and I had to sign a paper saying I would give 40% of my salary to the church.
Jeez.
And I said, no possible way. I said, I'll
give
more than that.
What happened to tithing? Folks, tithing means tenth. A tenth back to the Lord. Tithing means tenth. What the hey? But there's a lot of people doing it. There's a lot of empty churches in the world. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I want to get back to the word spiritual. Now, spiritual people believe they're spiritual because they don't follow what they call dogma. And they use the word, churches and religion is dogma. It's locked ideas that don't grow. Now, and I say, you can take the 10 Commandments in any time frame, the beginning of time to now. They don't hurt people. They don't make people sick, bad, or evil. So they're still livable. I mean, we could live with the 10 Commandments if we followed them. It wouldn't hurt nobody. So when they say we don't need to live by laws, they're creating their own laws. And because of that, they assume they're one with God, meaning they're responsible to themselves. And I explain this in my talks. The more spiritually aware you become, the more Spirit allows you to become, the more responsible to that you are. I mean, if you were granted all the psychic abilities, you would be responsible. Well, that sounds like
absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Absolute power corrupts
in this world, it does.
I've seen people that say they're spiritual. They start getting a little attention and going on radio shows and talking or going and speaking at events, and all of a sudden their ego takes over. And I've been talking to some people about different people, and they don't know who's backing their events. It's hilarious. They don't know it may be friends of ours in our ACO association, if you know what I mean.
Okay, let me just finish that statement on religion. Now, people that are in religion, they're not religious. If you could say, put God's name in anger, which is one of the 10 Commandments you can't do, if you can do that, you're going against the 10 Commandments. In Revelations, it says what